polemic aspects of biology and the way that biology is used as an ideological tool. But now that our friends that yesterday made us dance, I think it was a very beautiful moment, the concert they gave and people dancing. I want to share with them this poster that was part of an exhibition about racism. And we wanted to talk in this exhibition also about the Coltan conflict and the way that in this moment there is this big war in Congo. And well, many times have been discussed in relationship to Holocaust, how was possible that this massacre was occurring without the community indignation. And now in this moment we are being faced to many inhumanities across the world, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Congo and other countries around the world, that show us that there is still in the human species an incapacity to react to the most inhuman acts. And what we were showing in this, with this poster that was traveling around different towns in Argentina was the connection between Congo War and the Coltano conflict. As you may know, chips and many electronic apparatus need coltan, that is a superconducer of electrons. And the main mines of this material, that is an alliation of columbita and tantalum, exist in Congo, in the border with Rwanda. And some companies that are also here, like Alcatel, Siemens, Nokia, Motorola, IBM, Compaq, etc., need this material for producing cellular phones, also for the production of war devices. And they are putting money in both sides of the war. They are paying militias from Rwanda or the army in Congo to have the control of this material. And this has a strong connection not only with the atrocities of war, but also with ecological effects, like many species are in danger because the social tissue in Congo has changed too much. And for example, the bonobos, that is a species that is very, very close to the chimpanzees, and that they are a very interesting model for human evolution, are also in danger because of the Coltano war. But this is not related to the main topic of our show. But I think it's time to start, no?
Okay. No, I thought you would directly start, but good evening. I'm very happy to welcome Federico Geller, a biologist and artist from Argentina. He mostly works in collaborative projects, and the best known are Comunitaria TV or Grupo de Arte Callejero. And tonight he will talk like 25 minutes about actions and how we can learn from them. And I would like also to say tomorrow he will host a General Assembly at 2:05 in the Black Cube, following the principles of fusion and fission. Welcome, Federico.
Thank you. I must make an acclaration that I was working with Grupo de Arte Callejero many years, but in this moment I'm in La Comunitaria TV, or Abriendo Caminos. I will show some image of Grupo de Arte Callejero anyway. Well, this is a marathon, so I will go quite quickly. I need to make an historical introduction in 5–10 minutes about the situation that was the context for our interventions. Many of you may know that in Argentina, between 1976 and 1983, there was a dictatorship. It was the last dictatorship of many moments of military dictatorships in Argentina, but it was the worst one because it was the only one in one we had a wide genocide. No? A genocide that was not related to ethnic backgrounds, but more to political involvements of different sectors of society. In the 70s, Argentina was in a moment of high political organization. Many of the groups were working and political base roots and syndicates in the university. And there were also groups that were using warfare, guerrilla movements. And it was a moment of crisis of capitalism. It was not the only country with a dictatorship in that moment. In all South America, we had in Argentina, in Chile, Uruguay, Bolivia. We had it also in other continents. So it's the moment of a big capitalist crisis, the production of a lot of petrodollars. It's a moment of financial restructuration all around the world. During the dictatorship, the Madres de Plaza de Mayo, that were the mothers of many of the disappeared in Argentina, began to protest, and they were an isolated group that were fighting in isolation with very few political support. The political situation in Argentina was very complex. The dictatorship had a strong consensus, and it's very important to know that the dictatorship finished not because of people's resistance, but because Argentina was suddenly involved in the Falkland or Malvinas War, and they lost this war, so they had to leave power, and this is the moment when the democratic period began. So Madres de Plaza de Mayo now are a symbol of resistance, and they have a strong support from the Argentinian society. After they began this asking to know what was happening or what had happened with the disappeared. In the first year of democracy, there were very famous in Argentina artistic interventions. This is called the siluetazo because it's using silhouettes, and it was a way to give a physical existence to the disappeared, writing the names in the posters with human silhouettes that were drawn by people assisting demonstrations. And they were put in very different significant places like the Cathedral of Buenos Aires to point out at the collaboration of the religious authorities with the military government. So this is 1983. This is another action also calling to the appearance of desaparecidos in the early 80s. It's very important to know that the society was having very different reactions when the knowledge about the desaparecidos was beginning to be gathered, and big sectors of society were saying that they didn't know what was happening when these killings occurred. This is in 1989, a very massive demonstration. 200,000 people went to demonstrate against the indultation laws of Carlos Saúl Menem, because when the democracy began, there were an important trial against the main militaries, the couple of the junta. But because the militaries were putting a lot of pressure on the government, there were different indultations laws. At the beginning in the government of Raúl Alfonsín and then Carlos Saúl Menem. So all the participants in these killings and all these tortures, it's calculated that 30,000 people were disappeared, all were put free, they were set free, and all the process against the intermediate levels or the inferior levels of the military were freed. The process was stopped. So the image that we had, most of us, is that this impunity was going to be part of Argentinian future, that it was, the reaction against the indultation law was very strong at the beginning, but then was diluted. Until the 90s, it was very important when a group of hijos, of sons of disappeared, or youngsters that had been in exile, or just friends, began to gather and decide that they were not going to collaborate with the impunity. And then a new way of demonstration was created that was called the escrache, that is a very Argentinian word that could be translated to pointing out, to show something. These demonstrations were a change. It's interesting that it was a new generation, youngsters that were affected because their parents or some of the family were disappeared, but they had not grown up during the dictatorship, but in the years of democracy. This is an action also of Grupo de Arte Callejero. It was a map collecting some points of scratches that had already made, and putting these posters in the cities and showing the names and the addresses of people that were collaborators or active participators of these crimes. Grupo Arte Callejero made also these señalizations that were very important, like some kind of performance when the columns of people were approaching to the houses of these guys or to the places where they work. Their presence was stated in these street signalizations. Sometimes the houses were protected with this material because one of the actions was to throw red paint over the houses as a way of being clear. There was also always a political speech, and after the scratch, a party in the street. Because even when the thematic was really serious, there was a very strong liberation feeling and a happiness of participating in a situation like this, like the happiness of not being accomplice of the impunity. The scratches were also always very noisy. They have a lot of music, theater, and a lot of aesthetical and political intervention. It was a way of breaking silence. And it was also a territorial work because it was not something that suddenly happened, but the work was done in the neighborhoods, calling to neighbors to participate, calling to the social neighbors organizations to be part of the scratch. This was called the pre-scratch, no? The work in the territory before the scratch happened. But it was very interesting in the scratch that even when it was a very strong and maybe violent symbolical act, it was very clear for all of us that participate that we had to respect some limits in this symbolical violence to earn more legitimation and not losing in the eyes of society. This scratch, the religious, as I told, had a strong participation. Some priests participate even in the interrogatories during torture. One of those people was Cura Belavenia. Well, the situation changed, and this image circulated all around the world. When was the crisis of 2001, and the people went out to the streets because of the economical situation. It was a very interesting moment also because the riots, the riots in Buenos Aires began in the moment that the mothers of Plaza de Mayo were repressed during those days. So in the moment that people in the TVs watch the image of police repressing the mothers of Plaza de Mayo, many people feel strongly irritated and decide to go to the streets, and the violence escalated. And some people were killed. In all the country, 29 persons were killed. After the crisis, there was a moment where there was not clear what was going to happen. There was a lot of assemblies in the streets, a lot of hope that all the system was going to change. But after 2 years, the situation was in some way normalized after this image that the banks were going to end and the common state was going to end. There were very happy situations. But finally, we realized, the people that were involved in the assemblies, that we were not really representing an important quantity of the people, but most of the people wanted really some kind of normalization. And then was the election that Nestor Kirchner won. It's a very interesting election because, in fact, he didn't win the first election. Carlos Menem won it, but it was going to be a ballotage. Then Menem decided to leave because he knew that he was going to lose. And then President Kirchner began the government with a very low base of legitimacy, but he began to do very surprising moves. And one was this symbolical, artistical intervention of a president. He went to the military school and he ordered the main head of the military, the General Rodolfo Pendini, to take down the image of Videla and other dictators that were still in the military school. This is another angle of the intervention. It's funny because Robert Pendini has to use this strange device to arrive to the image. This image now is very famous. People are really believing that the memory in Argentina changed after this. We had a lot of discussion inside the artistic field because many artists were not happy about the situation, and they were saying that it was only a symbolical act. But for me, it was interesting to assess that artists that are doing interventions must give importance to symbolical acts because they have political consequences. Another important decision in the symbolical field, that one of the main concentration camps, that was the Escuela de Mecánica de la Armada, where maybe 5,000 people were killed, was taken out from the marine, from the military marine, and was given to the human rights groups to organize cultural centers. From this moment to now, the last week, there are already 300 participants in the crimes of dictatorship that have received a condemnation by the justice. So how was possible to most of us that were participating in the scratches and in the human rights movements believe that no one of these guys was going to be ever in the justice, and that our acts were only a moral position and not being, not desiring to be part of the impunity system? How can we explain this? Well, one of the steps in this process was to begin to redirect the Scratche. The Scratche was at the beginning a constructor of knowledge. It was directed to different identities, both military and both civilians, and each Scratche was trying to shed a new light, a new dimension on the way that the dictatorship made their crimes. But this Scratche was due to a judge because, of course, the possibility that the justice that was also built during the dictatorship could put these military and the civilian accomplices in jail was to ask too much. It was very important to create, before a conflict, inside the institutional justice. So this is a comic we made for talking about what was the role of Bisordi. He was a judge that during the dictatorship was rejecting the habeas corpus to Madres de Plaza de Mayo when they were asking for their sons. He didn't accept the portfolios the mothers gave him. And in this moment, he was stopping by bureaucratic ways the possibility that the trials could happen. And also a judge, Hermelo, who made his career in the Escuela de Mecánica de la Armada. He was in charge of selling the goods that were kidnapped, because when the people were kidnapped at their houses, also their cars or the TV or the liquefiers or every object was stolen from their houses and was put in the market by people like this guy that was afterwards an important judge in the Argentinian justice. These guys have to reject and to leave justice after the scratches. And these are the different posters we made, because something that was very important during the scratch was that the message or the slogan was, if there is no justice, then we make an scratch. No? There is no justice, there is a scratch. And this was a concept related to the social condemnation. There is no unofficial condemnation. The institutions cannot make these condemnations, so we do it. But in the moment that the trials began and the situation began to be institutionalized, or I want to say they became part of the institution, it was very important that the social condemnation still exists, and it was not only a bureaucratic situation, because it was also the importance to go on creating knowledge about what had happened. So this was for the first trial they made for the ESMA. This was another in Chaco, a province in the north of Buenos Aires. This is the first trial to Videla, that was the main head of the military coup. So he's the symbol of the dictatorship. And well, he had most, I think in this moment he's in the 6th trial. It's possible that his life will end in one trial, because he's going from one place to another, receiving lifetime condemnations. In this moment, we had a lot of football images because it was the moment of the World Cup and most people's attention was put in the football games. So we decided to put some kind of Aikido and use the football as part of this situation. This is a police guy, Patty, also a symbol, because after the dictatorship, he was voted by part of the population to be some kind of burgermeister of an area, of a mayor of some area of Buenos Aires. It happened with many people that participated in the dictatorship, that they still had support from part of the population. We have 5 minutes. So you see. Now, well, different posters. One of the problems is that we couldn't create image of the trials because the justice was putting a lot of limits to have cameras inside the trials. So we invite students of arts to come and to make drawings during the trials. There was a strong campaign calling for artists, students, designers, or the population to come with paper and a pencil and to do an artistic attack over the tribunal. These are some of the examples. Some were more realistic, taking into account details of the moment. Some were more childish, talking about the relationship between the neighbors and the concentration camps. Some used comics as a way of not having a video, but some narration. And also doing performance during the World Cup that was for talking about a collaboration between the entrepreneurs, the religious, and the justice. These situations are always very happy, and the trials had normally very good condemnations, and there is a party in the street when the situation ends. Another trial that finished was about the appropriation of children. You know that many of these desaparecidos had children that were taken by the militaries or the pregnant women. They wait until the moment of delivery and they were killed later, and the children were given to military families or friends. So this is very recent, of July of this year. Well, this is also important things maybe to finish, is that the trials to the military were easier to do than to civilians, like important capitalists of Argentina that were part of the decision of the genocide. So it was not that the military decided to kill the people that were participating in different social and political organizations, but it was a decision that was shared not only with the authorities of the Catholic Church, but also with the main capitalists of Argentina. This is an image that talks about a meeting that was recently happening in Buenos Aires for supporting the guy that is in the center, that is the owner of a very important sugar factory, and is responsible for the disappearance of 33 militants. Well, so time is gone. We know which are the rules of this marathon. Well, 5 more minutes.
2, please.
2 minutes. Now, the only thing I wanted to show you in 2 minutes, I won't show you, I'm sorry, because we cannot do it, but what is important is the energy of our group and all the people that are participating, mainly with HIJOS, another human rights organization, is not only put in trying to judge the past, but also to create some confrontations with actual actors of the political level. And this is a very interesting story for the next time.
Thank you very much, Federico.